Stories at the top of his bulletin, that EU meeting of potential sanctions against Russia.
Yeah, I mean, as we've been talking about, there's no consensus among EU leaders over another phase of sanctions, the so-called phase 3, which would be broader measures that have been taken already. And that's largely because of fears over what effects that might have over the economic and financial ties between the EU and Russia. Those links are particularly pronounced in London, where Russian investors are big players in property, the luxury sector, and, of course, the stock market. We've a report now from Helen Percival in London and our team.
From these computers in the city of London, Moscow is much closer than it might appear. In total, 70 Russian businesses are listed in the British capital.
So Lenta is a Russian supermarket, and this is a dual-listed London and Moscow company.
But the threat of fresh EU sanctions against Russia doesn't seem to be cause for concern.
I don't think the city is worried about further EU sanctions at the moment. What they've done is limited so far, and I think what they could do more is somewhat mild to temperate, but nothing that will essentially hurt economic growth.
In this shop selling exclusive wines, Russian millionaire Evgeny Shishvakin is feeling some effects of the crisis in Ukraine.
We lost 2 customers because now they didn't buy the wine. They have a lot of troubles.
Were they from Russia? Or were they
from Ukraine? The account's frozen.
But for this exiled former businessman, the impact of the sanctions stops there.
Now it doesn't work. They all afraid of the Putin.
This is some reassurance for the luxury boutiques of Mayfair, just a few streets away.
One of the third biggest market for us would be the Russians, certainly. So it's an important sector.
Also, as the biggest foreign buyers of homes in London, it's a significant clientele the British capital can't afford to lose.
Indeed. Now, next to what's moving the markets, this is comments from Janet Yellen at the Federal Reserve.
Yes, she spoke for an hour, but the markets only heard 3 words, and those 3 words were around 6 months. This from the new chair of the Federal Reserve, a reference to when they may raise interest rates earlier than expected in 2015 being the implication. Janet Yellen also announced the reduction of the America's central bank stimulus program by another $10 billion a month. This as things continue to improve in the US economy. Now, one analyst called Janet Yellen's comments a haze of uncertainty for the markets. Let's see how that affected trading in Asia today. All of the Asian markets in the red as a result. You can see the Nikkei closed down 1.65%, the Hang Seng in Hong Kong, and right across the board, the markets there worried about what the Federal Reserve will do in the future. There's been a knock-on effect in trading in Europe today as well. The markets there have opened all in the red too. A couple of shares we're looking into for you. The British clothing retailer Next saw their shares up over 1%. This as they reported profits up 12% for last year. And the luxury group Mulberry, their shares down 2.5% after the chief executive Bruno Guillon quit after recent profit warnings.
Thanks, Stephen. Sorry for that sneeze in the middle. It was me. I'm not feeling too on top of things today. Now, let's go to the US. Car maker Toyota is to pay a record sum to settle claims over accelerator problems.
Yeah, $1.2 billion, in fact, to resolve this criminal probe into safety issues. The settlement includes an admission by the car maker that it misled American consumers about defects that caused cars to accelerate, even as drivers tried to slow them down. Now, we've been hearing from the chief executive of Toyota in Japan today. He says, in the long term, such mass recalls like the one triggered by this defect are in fact good for the car industry.
I want people to stop immediately thinking that recalls equal something bad. For us and others in the industry, these recalls mean that once a problem is found, we need to make sure it's immediately fixed and that customers are kept safe. It also means we need to increase our product quality.
Take a quick look now at some of the day's other business stories, and starting with the French bank Crédit Agricole, which is to cut more than €500 million in costs over the next 3 years. The lender is targeting net profits of more than €4 billion by 2016, 60% higher than its figure for last year. It plans to do so by concentrating on its retail banking and insurance businesses. And profits at Deutsche Bank more than doubled last year to €681 million. The German lender has already warned of a slow start to this year in its investment banking division. It set aside €1.8 billion at the end of 2013 to cover legal costs.
And finally, the Mandela family. They're hoping to make a big success of its wine here in Europe. They're into wine, are they, the Mandelas?
Yeah, the Mandela Wine, it was founded by Nelson Mandela's granddaughter and her daughter back in 2010, so 4 years ago. They've been selling them in South Africa quite successfully and exporting to some countries, but this is the first European country. They launched the brand in the Netherlands on Wednesday. Makazue Mandela said the family's hoping to use the name to sell their brand across Europe. There are 2 reds and 2 whites selling under the Mandela name, retailing for around €5.50. Coming at a time, though, in general, South African wine doing very well in Europe, sales soaring because of the falling value of the rand against the euro.
You know what I'm going to say?
What are you going to say?
Where's the sample?
I didn't bring any, sadly. It's a bit early for me, to be honest.
He does his best, doesn't he? Stephen Carroll, thank you very much. Stephen with Business. You can get a bottle for tomorrow, perhaps. Now we're going to have a look at what's grabbing headlines around the world in the papers. Of course, Flo, a lot of focus on Russia and Ukraine still, isn't
That's right.